Welcome to the March 17th session of the Phoenix Congress, where we are writing a blueprint for a better America. This legislative package will end poverty with universal basic income, end mass incarceration with major criminal justice reform, and end the endless wars by bringing our troops home and reducing our military budget. Today's session is the 18th of 21 public hearings on the 2022 legislative package, and we will review sections 441 to 443 relative to the American Union Jobs Program. These sessions will alternate between Mondays and Thursdays at 1:30 p.m. Eastern through March 28th. For those following along at home, you can find a link to the legislative package in the description below or at bit.ly/B, lowercase drop box. If you have questions about today's sections, you can submit them in the chat. And if you'd like to offer questions or other testimony for future hearings, please use the link in the description below. Before starting, I'd like to invite you to join us in reciting the preamble to the Constitution of the United States to remind us of our duties as Americans and set the intention for what we are trying to do today. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. With that, I'd like to welcome the delegate from North Carolina's 9th District to continue his testimony on the blueprint for a better America.
Thank you, Mixed Chair. For the record, my name is Brian. I'm an organizer with the American Union and a Phoenix Congress delegate in good standing, representing North Carolina's 9th District. And we're going to continue Title IV, promoting the general welfare. Just the general reminder, welfare means health, happiness, prosperity. And so how do we promote prosperity? We ensure that everyone has enough money to participate in the economy and keep it circulating. So we looked at the Treasury dollar bill portions of this legislation at the last hearing, how the digital cash will work. And today we're going to look at Subtitle B, the American Union Jobs Program, and how it gets distributed. So Section 441 is the findings and purpose. Just to give a brief overview, the American Union Jobs Program is a universal basic income. Everyone gets an American Union job. Everyone gets an unconditional $300 a week, and it's paid in Treasury dollar bills. This is the distribution program for the Treasury dollar bills to ensure we have a trickle-up economy where all citizens benefit. And I'd like to read the findings into the record. They're a little bit on the lengthy side, but they cover the reasons of why universal basic income, why we can do this, why we should do this, what are the benefits of doing this. And yeah, I'm just going to read these into the record. A, Congress finds the following. 1, America has sufficient resources to ensure that none of its citizens live in poverty. The easiest, simplest way to do this is with universal unconditional income, basic income, UBI, a regular amount of cash distributed to all citizens. In his book, The Road to Serfdom, Hayek advocated for assuring that some minimum of food, and shelter, and clothing were provided to everyone. However, individuals are best suited to decide what their specific needs are. Providing fungible cash gives people the liberty to make their own choices. 2, it is the unconditionality and universality that brings many of the intangible benefits of UBI. Finland's recent experiment found recipients experienced increased trust, which is something America could benefit from, when they felt supported by those around them. Many societal benefits addressing wealth inequality have been well documented in the book, The Spirit Level, Why Greater Equality Makes Society Stronger. 3, as a form of UBI, the American Union Jobs Program will establish a safety floor that no one can fall beneath at $15,600 annually for adults, plus $5,200 a year for children. Allowing tens of millions of our countrymen to fall into poverty through the holes in our existing safety net demonstrates that we are failing in our constitutional duty to promote the general welfare, health, happiness, and prosperity. When combined with Treasury dollar bills and a public payment infrastructure, it will also bring millions into the banking system and reduce demand for predatory lending. 4, the health of the nation will benefit by ending poverty with UBI. In her book, Hand to Mouth, Living in Bootstrap America, Linda Tirado observed, quote, being healthy and being poor are generally mutually exclusive conditions. We all have physical weaknesses, but a rich person tends to get these tended to before they get out of control. Poor people don't have that luxury. 5. Consequently, poverty is a tremendous driver of healthcare usage, although it hasn't always been that way. 50 years ago, average costs for poor patients were less than those of wealthy patients. In 1992, they reached parity, and by 2008, Medicare spending was 30 to 40% higher for lower income beneficiaries. 6. Dr. Richard Buzz Cooper examined usage rates within the Wisconsin hospital referral regions, where Milwaukee has a 35% higher usage rate than the rest of the state, measured in days used per 1,000 people. However, that usage was not uniform within the city. When usage rates were broken out by zip codes, he discovered that the poorest ones had an 85% above average utilization rate. It concluded that lifting up the poor and near poor residents could decrease hospital utilization by as much as 35%. He wrote, quote, "Most of this increment was due to very high rates of admission and readmission for chronic illnesses, such as congestive heart failure, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and diabetes, which were 4-fold to 7-fold more frequent among residents of the poverty corridor than those residing in Milwaukee's affluent suburbs." 7. Children will gain some of the largest health benefits from UBI. When pregnant mothers are stressed, studies show they can pass along epigenetic hardships to their unborn children, leading to an increased risk of many of the health issues that Dr. Cooper identified in Milwaukee. 8. Childhood development is also impacted by economic stress in a household. Adults concerned about issues like rent are less talkative, and the amount of verbal engagement children receive is a key indicator of future success. A 2018 study estimating the economic cost of childhood poverty in the United States found that poverty also increases child maltreatment, which then drives foster care services and other child welfare programs. Their research suggested poverty was the direct cause of 30% of the children in the child welfare system. 9. The lifetime costs of childhood poverty are tremendous. That same study estimated them at $1,030 billion for the cohort of children born in a given year. More than 1/3 was attributed to crime and incarceration, with another 29% coming from reduced lifetimes earnings. And the authors concluded, children being raised in poverty do not have the same chances for success as children who are raised in middle or upper income families. This contradicts our very belief in liberty and justice for all. 10. During the 1990s, research in the Great Smoky Mountains of North Carolina were studying the long-term psychological impacts of poverty on children there. And a few years into the study, profit sharing from a new casino boosted the family incomes of about a quarter of the participants. The resulting control group provided an insight into the familial effects of reducing poverty. Parents reported a third less arguments, less drug and alcohol usage, and the children's behavioral symptoms dropped 27%. When they grew up, they were 22% more likely to find a full-time job. 11. Many of the health benefits are directly attributable to empowering parents to make better decisions for their children. Parents all across the economic spectrum tend to spend extra money on their kids when they can. Fruits, vegetables, other healthier foods in the house are one common result of basic income experiments. In Alaska, babies who got a $1,000 oil dividend in their first year of life were 4.5% less likely to be obese compared to those whose benefit didn't arrive until they were toddlers. 12. American union jobs recognize the value in the work that everyone does, even if it's not employment. UBI will allow many families to consider having a parent stay home during a child's formative years, further strengthening families. Proposals to address poverty with a higher minimum wage miss important booms like this one because they only benefit those who work for financial compensation. UBI is an unconditional $300 a week raise for every adult, plus $100 for every child. It offers greater freedom to decide for oneself how to allocate time between work and leisure. 13. The cliche of the starving artist is well known. With UBI to provide a minimum level of income, it's easy to imagine art colonies springing up, with people pooling their incomes and sharing a house while they pursue their art. Others will form cooperatives around different businesses or industries. One can picture artisans working together to run small factories or farms, video game studios, other boutique offerings of all sorts. With America enmeshed in the World Wide Web, the demand for global entrepreneurial services can be provided from anywhere. 14. For those engaged in traditional employment, American union jobs will provide greater liberty in choosing an employer, freeing people to seek right livelihood. They will also enable greater civic engagement. Occupy Wall Street needed about $1,000 a day for food in Zuccotti Park, and while people made sacrifices to be there, it was unsustainable. American union jobs bring the power to petition our government for redress of grievances. On $300 a week, campaigns could literally occupy Washington. 15. UBI unlocks large amounts of human potential that is currently trapped by poverty. The impact of economic stress has been tested in many ways, such as evaluating farmers in India before and after the harvest. The distraction of insecurity has been found to lower IQ by 13 points and to increase the number of errors factory workers make. 16. Unsurprisingly, poverty is also a driver of crime. Basic economic principles suggest people commit crimes if the benefits outweigh the cost, so poor people have a greater rate of return. Alaska discovered that property crimes fell about 8% in the 2 weeks after their annual oil dividend was distributed. 17. This influence works in both directions. The criminal justice system disproportionately includes people in the lower quintiles of income. A Villanova University study concluded mass incarceration has increased the U.S. poverty rate by an estimated 20%. A family's probability of being poor is 40% greater if the father is imprisoned. 18. Many Americans would use their UBI to pay down student loans or other debt. As productivity has increased since the 1970s, wages have not kept up with these gains, resulting in an economic gap between the amount of wages earned in the economy and the value of goods produced for sale. That structural deficit, which has been temporarily filled in with increasing consumer debt, can only be permanently bridged by an external source of income, or alternately negated by widespread defaults. American union jobs are essential to the continued prosperity of our nation. 19. Although they are unconditional, no one can be fired from an American union job any more than they can be fired from being an American. They do include job duties, because they are a regular reminder of the 5 duties enumerated in the preamble: establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. 20. Even the rare individual who does nothing productive in a given week is promoting the general welfare, prosperity, by spending $300, bridging that structural gap between wage income and productive output. This will rejuvenate local economies all around the nation as small businesses reap the rewards of new paying customers. An economy powered by UBI is a trickle-up economy. Money is spent multiple times as it works its way up the economic ladder. 21. As Americans, we can cooperate to ensure that all of us have enough to meet our basic needs. That gives us greater freedom from economic coercion, providing the ability to walk away from abusive or exploitative relationships. The liberty to make meaningful choices about our lives is a critical component of happiness. Subsection B, purpose. The purpose of the American Union Jobs Program is to 1, promote health, happiness, and prosperity; 2, remind every citizen of the United States of our duties to each other; and 3, to end poverty. Mixed Chair, I think that covers an awful lot, and I'll let that conclude my testimony for section 441, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit, ask a few questions. Why should this program be universal or unconditional? If the goal is to end poverty, wouldn't it make more sense to only give money to poor people?
Thank you for the question. You know, I said that the findings covered an awful lot, but yeah, I guess they didn't really cover that. There's so many benefits to universal basic income. So why not make it targeted? Why not only give money to poor people? Scott Santens, who's a longtime advocate and researcher on universal basic income, he's written many articles on this topic, and you should, if you want to know more, you should look up his work. But some of the articles he's written, some of the points that he's made is that our existing welfare structure allows many people to fall through. It's a safety net, and which by definition is full of holes. And in some states, you know, it's 5-10% of the people who are eligible for these programs don't end up receiving them, which is why we have nearly 40 million people in this country living in poverty. Another one of his articles uses the example of life jackets, that, if you're in a room with 100 people that's rapidly filling with water, who do you give life jackets to, assuming there's enough for everybody? And the answer is just give them to everybody. Don't start asking people who knows how to swim or who needs one. You don't need to make any complicated bureaucracy. Just give a life jacket to everyone. And in America, we have the resources to make sure that to lift every American out of poverty. And so let's not waste time on trying to divide people into worthy and unworthy. Let's lift everyone up with a universal program. And the last article is very persuasive, calls universal basic income liquid infrastructure, because money is fungible. Well, you can do whatever fits best for you. If this week, this month you need help with your rent, you can use it for that. If next month your car breaks down, you can use it for that. If you need food, you can use it for that. If you have a garden, then you don't need to do that. If you want to pay down your student loans, it's liquid infrastructure. It will fill the needs as you see fit. Yeah, I guess one other reason that I'd like to talk about is the stigma of making programs not including everyone. And we saw this. There's a great article by John Muniz of the People's Basics, and he listed 15 reasons why means testing was a terrible idea. And so, just very briefly, he points out that means testing creates higher administrative costs. It causes more administrative errors. It makes programs more politically divisive. And this is something that really needs to be addressed in America today. The point of a universal basic income is to get all Americans on the same page, not dividing us into the 99% and the 1% or whatever else. We're all Americans, and we should all benefit from this program. His other points include that means testing creates a work disincentive, that if you're going to lose your benefits if you start earning income, then maybe you don't look for work. It creates the benefit delays and disruptions. It creates an information risk for benefit delivery. It's not more progressive because the net benefit of the poor is higher than the net benefit for the rich, because the rich will be spending more on taxes funding the aid. We'll talk more about this when we get into the value-added tax next week. Means testing creates poorer quality programs. It creates stigma in receiving benefits. This is another very important reason why this should be a universal program, so that there is no stigma attached to it. Nobody feels like they're taking advantage of the government by using the public roads or the sidewalks or the libraries or things like that, because those are universal programs. But there are some people, some families, that getting welfare, getting government help is something that they choose not to do, even if it means that kids grow up in poverty as a result of that choice. So let's just end poverty. And one of the last things is that means testing makes benefit programs handle income fluctuation worse. We saw this in 2020 when lots of people lost their jobs. And so if you do means testing on how much somebody made last year, well, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with how much they're currently earning. And so a universal program is better. And last, means testing incentivizes people to commit fraud in order to receive more benefits. One universal program at a flat rate, there's no incentive to say you made less than you did, or to hide your income, or anything like that, because everybody gets an American Union job on unconditional $300 a week. So next year, I think those are some of the reasons why we don't just give money to poor people and keep it as a universal program for all Americans.
Right. Do you know how many conditional welfare programs we have at the federal level right now?
The last number I think I heard was 126. That's the number that jumps to mind.
Sounds like they're not working.
Well, there's a lot of overlap. There's where.
Well, that's
go ahead.
that's my point. Is they're not the Achilles heel of all of them is that they are conditional. Otherwise, we wouldn't keep making new ones.
That's a great point.
Yeah, yeah. So that's just a point I like to make. Okay. Seeing no further questions, section 441 is assigned to the subcommittee on findings. You may proceed to section 442.
All right, thank you. Section 442 is the American Union Jobs Program. This is the mechanics of how exactly universal basic income works. Again, this was not enough to just say we would like to have universal basic income. We need a very specific plan and proposal, and that's what's in this section. It adds a new subchapter to Social Security, which is an appropriate place because universal basic income is a Social Security. And we got two sections that we're adding. Section 1398 is definitions. I'm going to share my screen here. And once again, most of these definitions are pretty standard. Just want to clarify that adult is any adult or an emancipated minor. So if you're 16 and you've left home, then you've been legally emancipated, then you start collecting your universal basic income at the adult rate. American Union job, again, we spell out exactly how unconditional it is. That this payments may not be withheld for any reason, including but not limited to age, ancestry, arrest record, bankruptcy, criminal conviction, debt, or other liability, gender, geographic location, income, marital status, occupation, race, religion, or sexual orientation. Universal basic income is universal and unconditional. Our basic wage starts at $15,600 a year. And then children's wage is 1/3 of that. Again, we reiterate the job duties of Americans, the 5 listed in the preamble of the Constitution. And the people who receive this program are either adults, American citizens, parent or legal guardian of a child, or a child who is a beneficiary because their parents have chosen to divert some money into their account. And so those are the basic definitions. And then the second part of this section is a new section 1398B. This is the American Union Jobs Program. It is established within the Social Security Administration, and the responsibilities of the Deputy Commissioner are pretty basic, hiring, rules, regulations, agreements. Paragraph 4 is enrolling every citizen into the American Union Jobs Program. So again, every citizen and getting basic information, name, contact information, date and place of birth, Social Security number, digital treasury account information, because that's how American Union jobs are paid. Preferred frequency of payments, depending on your situation, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, may be better or worse for you to receive your $15,600 a year. All right, we got paragraph 5 is the amount that you're going to calculate to get. So if you're an adult, it's $15,600 a year, plus if you're a parent or legal guardian of a child or children, the sum of all payments that you're entitled to under subsection E, which we'll get to in a minute. Or if you're a child and your parents are diverting some money into your account, then the Treasury will make those payments. Paragraph 6 here, providing the Secretary the list of adults and children annually at the end of the fiscal year. This is going to come up again. This is the voluntary value sharing provision we touched on briefly with the Treasury dollar bills. And we'll talk about more when we get to the value added tax next week. Again, they're responsible for preventing fraud and abuse, maintaining information on a website, reminding Americans of their voluntary job duties. again, you're not, and then the American Union Jobs Program doesn't make you an employee. You're an independent contractor charged with making a better America, adding value in whatever way you see fit. It's entirely up to you. Subsection D is how the basic wage is calculated. And it is indexed for inflation starting in 2025. So we've got sort of a hold harmless kind of thing here. Let's, all right. This is my quick mock-up here. So in 2025, this is how they'll calculate what the new basic wage will be. One way would be to just multiply it times the rate of inflation as of August 2024, what the rate of inflation was for the previous 12 months. And you could just multiply that out and then round it up to the nearest $5. That's what Roman 1 allows for. Then we can also calculate what is the poverty line, and will the basic wage still be enough to keep every American above the poverty line by the end of the next calendar year, after a full year. And so in this scenario where we're at high inflation now, things start to settle down. And then in 2024, when the value-added tax, 12% value-added tax goes into effect, along with the carbon fees and pollution fees, there'll be a one-time bump in prices. And so if you figure 15% in that 1 year, you calculate out what the poverty line will be for the upcoming year and subtract what you calculated in Roman 1. And if it's more, if it's a positive number, then that would be the greater number to increase the basic wage by. Now, when we have a year of deflation, we're in a period of inflation right now because of supply chain and problems and things like that. And so if it goes the other way, as things get back to normal, then if prices fall, 0 is the hold harmless. That would be the greater of any of these things. So that's how the inflation is calculated. It's based on the consumer price index, not the consumer wage index. So whatever prices go up, then basic income goes up as well. Subsection E is intern's wage. Again, children are our interns. They are the ones that we're raising to be productive American citizens. And so they get paid at a one-third rate. And here's how it's divided up. By default, paragraph 1, that $100 a week is distributed evenly between both parents. So $50 in dad's account, $50 in mom's account, whatever. That's how it goes by default. If the parents want to work out a different arrangement, say, for whatever reason, as long as they both agree, that percentage can be changed. It can go all to one parent, 75% to one parent, whatever. So we allows for that. If they want to put some of this money aside so that the child has a nest egg when they become adult, they can direct that some percentage of it gets put into their digital treasury account, as long as they both agree. And then paragraph 4 is, well, what happens if the parents don't agree? And the default of 50-50 isn't an equitable distribution. And so in this case, either parent or legal guardian can ask that the payment be divided by pursuant to a court order by the days of residential responsibility each year. So if the kids are with mom 75% of the time and they're with dad 25% of the time, then that's how the children's dividends would be split 75-25 based on the court order. So that's how that's addressed. Subsection F, payments under this section. People ask, does this stack with other benefit programs? And so when it comes to Social Security and disability, it stacks. These payments are not considered substantial gainful activity that would otherwise disqualify you. They are not considered wages for the purpose of the Social Security program. And in addition, the Social Security Administration will also protect these payments from garnishment. Again, universal basic income is unconditional. Everyone gets it. And that's it. For appropriations, the Social Security Administration is a very efficient organization, has very low administrative costs. We're estimating that they're going to be about 1/4 of 1% of the annual cost. And so 1% of the value added tax is going to go to fund these costs. 1% of the VAT will go to the Social Security Administration to administer this program, and then repay any of the startup costs over 10 years. Now, so the obvious question is 1/4 of 1% of what? What is the amount that we're going to spend on universal basic income? And we estimate that there's going to be 249 million adults and 71 million children enrolled in this program when it starts up. That means a little less than $4.25 trillion will be issued as Treasury dollar bills equally to everyone. Half of that will then be clawed back through new taxes, the value added tax and pollution fees, as well as a few other small cuts. And as we talked about with Treasury dollar bills, that's going to leave us with a net addition of about $2 trillion in the economy each year, added at the bottom, so that we have a real trickle-up economy that ends poverty and takes the pressure off the Federal Reserve to keep interest rates so low to encourage people to borrow money and add it to the economy. We're going to create it directly and give everyone an equal share. I think that pretty much concludes my testimony for section 442, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Fantastic. Yes, we have some messages in the chat. I'm going to go through and love to have your response. So TC said, did you say that pay starts at $15,000 a year?
Yes, $15,600 a year for adults, 1/3 of that for children.
Yes. And then the next thing he asked was, is that on top of UBI? And I think this kind of points at a problem with the lingo of, is the American Jobs Program, is that the name of the Universal Basic Income Program, or are those two separate things?
That is the name of the Universal Basic Income Program. It's the American Union Jobs Program, to remind every American that we all have duties to each other, that it's our job to establish justice and so forth. And that's what your $300 a week is for, is go be a good American, however you see fit.
Okay, so that is the framing of it, that this isn't like a traditional jobs program where you are employed by the government to work on infrastructure. This is, the government is paying you to be a good American according to the principles of the Constitution.
Yes, you're not an employee, you're an independent contractor.
Yes, but it is still unconditional.
Yes.
So the courts can't take it away from you effectively.
Correct.
So that's okay. So that's a really important point. TC then said $15,600 is less than I get for Social Security, and even living simply, I barely get by.
Okay. I
don't know if you have a response you'd like to share.
Well, so this is a national poverty line, and people who choose to live in, places with high cost of living, then this may not be enough to meet their basic needs living on their own. They have options of sharing, having roommates and pooling the expenses and sharing costs and kind of things, or moving to a part of the country with a lower cost of living. Those are because your American Union job is attached to you, you can move around the country wherever you want and know that wherever you stop, you're guaranteed $300 a week to help you meet your basic expenses. But yes, I totally acknowledge that $15,000 a year in New York City or something like that is not enough for one person to meet their basic needs. But if they choose to live there instead of someplace where they could meet their basic needs, then they're accepting responsibility for making up the difference.
Okay. And so I guess the American Jobs Program stacks with Social Security insurance, correct? So
Yes,
for TC specifically, he would get this $15,600 a year on top of the Social Security he's already receiving.
that's correct.
Okay, fantastic. And then we have DJ Elf in the comments as well. It says, it feels like the big challenge is people are scared because the document is so large, they could get left out. If people have to make too many choices, then they can't decide. Reason for the plan as well, but people will want to make decisions and look over the entirety of the plan. Okay, so I think I'm trying. Yeah, the grammar is a little strange. So I think his concern is just the length of the legislative package. Do you have any comments on that?
Sure. I guess how do laws get passed now, right? Congress passes something. They just passed a daylight saving time change that they introduced it one week and the Senate passed it the next week. We can all remember times where they passed, giant bills, with no notice to people. The Blueprint for a Better America, as introduced, is available to read for anyone on the website inamericanunion.com. And so if people want to read it, they can, the same way that they can read all sorts of bills on congress.gov. The way that a union of swing voters works is by having one specific set of demands. And so while I can understand DGL7's, like what if we could just all go a la carte and we could all just pick and choose which specific policies we wanted? Well, then the union wouldn't be very strong if, one person says, I want this, I want that, and there's not a cohesive set of demands. The power is acting together with one set of demands. And so that's what the legislative package is. Again, it's there for anyone to read. If they don't want to, then they're probably not reading the legislation that's being passed right now in Congress. And Republicans and Democrats who represent us in Congress are not looking out for us. They're not doing a good job. But in the 21st century, we can look out for ourselves by crowdsourcing our own legislative policy and backing it up as a union of swing voters. So I'm not sure what else to recommend for him. If I'm not sure what else to tell him. So I hope that answers his concerns.
Okay. TC says, so I can work for extra dollars? And I think the short answer to that question is yes.
The short answer is yes. It's unconditional. And so it's a safety floor. You can use capitalism to build as high as you want from that floor.
Fantastic. And then I have a few questions. So you had this whole section about parents divvying up the payments in different ways. Is that, to me, that seems like an unnecessary added feature that just increases administrative overhead, that we'd be better off just keeping it simpler and allowing them to manage their own finances.
I'm sorry, did you say allowing the children to manage their own finances?
No, the parents. So I think the court order makes sense where if you have an uneven. So if we're talking about a pair of parents and how they divvy up the children's universal basic income, I understand the reason to allow court orders to have unequal amounts given to each parent when there are unequal amounts of custody given to each parent. I think that makes sense. But does it make sense to also just have that as a custom feature that parents can apply to the administration and just pick and choose their different amounts rather than just saying this is extra administration that we don't need, and parents that are together, we can allow them to just organize their own finances and exchange money back and forth. This is a just extra administrative cost that we don't need. That's what it feels like to me. It feels like extra administration that isn't needed. Do you have a response?
Sure. We'll just pull that section back up. So we're in agreement. You support paragraph 1, which is just dividing it equally between the parents, and paragraph 4, which is if there's a court order, make that, that follow the court order. And how about paragraph 3, allowing parents who, maybe don't need this extra $100 a week, allowing it to put it in their children's account automatically.
Well, okay, so that's a good point, because the children's treasury account is given to them upon being born, U.S. citizen, correct?
Is assigned to them on birth, yes.
Is assigned to them on birth. Why? Okay, so
as soon as they become an American citizen, they get
right.
a personal U.S.
That is in the child's digital treasury account. Are the parents able to access money that is in a child's treasury account?
The legislation is vague on this. So this is something that would be developed through rules.
Okay, because I think in my head, I would almost default to just putting it in the child's digital treasury account and then just having the rules around how parents are allowed to access that money. And not necessarily, I think that is a simpler, more straightforward approach that just gives the power to the parents to make that decision, but ultimately has that initial protection for the children, and for that money to make sure that it is going to the children first and foremost, and then from there making those decisions. So at that point, then you wouldn't even need this thing where it is divided equally among the parents. I would actually almost disagree with that then, with subsection 1, and say that it should just go straight into the children's treasury account.
And so my interpretation of this would be more along the lines of, no, the parents can't touch the children's account. It's the children's account. And so that's why the UBI payment goes to the parents. And at some point, as the child matures, 12 or whatever, they could get access to their account or something along those lines and be able to start spending it and using it however they want. But yeah, it's not. I think I've heard you say that children aren't property, and so accounts assigned to children should not be the adults' property by default. So, and then so the last one, paragraph 2, is about allowing parents to agree to assign a different percentage. So, for example, 2 parents split up, and one parent has the kids. There's no court order or anything yet. There's no divorce decree or anything yet, but they could agree that, okay, the parent with the kids should get all of the children's benefits. And because it's by unanimous agreement, it should be a very, very straightforward change to make in the Social Security Administration, because there's not any judgment around it. It's just checking the box. So I hope that answers your questions.
Okay. Yeah, and then different switching lanes here. This only applies to American citizens. It does not apply to permanent residents or people of any other kind of citizenship status.
That's correct. It only applies to American citizens. The one exception to that would be if a child who is an American citizen, if they're one or both of their parents are non-citizens, residents, whatever, that parent would receive half of the children's dividend. If you remember in the Treasury dollar bills, we talked about these B2 accounts that will be set up for parents of citizens who aren't citizens themselves. So that's the one exception.
I,
But
I
but I want to say that universal basic income benefits everyone, even if it doesn't directly go to citizens. The benefits of living in a society that is addressing wealth inequality, that is reducing crime, that where there is more money circulating around the economy for immigrants are frequently entrepreneurs. They come here and want to start businesses, and so here's a way to encourage that by making sure the people around them have money to support their business. So even if it doesn't go to them directly, it will benefit them indirectly.
Okay, yeah. And I just want to clarify something on the math here. So children get $100 a week, correct?
Correct.
So if you have a child who was born on American soil, so they are a citizen, but both of their parents are non-citizens, is it $50 to each parent or $25 to each parent?
$50 to each parent.
Okay, so it's still the
$100
full
to
amount.
us.
You
Yes.
said half, assuming the two-parent situation. Okay, got you. That helps. And then is the text generalized to consider other types of parenting situations, such as having 3 co-parents or 4 co-parents? Are those cases also covered by the text?
Yeah. So we'll see, it specifically says payment shall be divided equally among the parents or legal guardians. Doesn't
Okay.
say half, it's just equally. And it can be unequally in any ways. And then divided again based on results. So there's nothing in here that says specifically 2 parents exactly.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, seeing no further questions, section 442 is assigned to the Subcommittee on Promoting Well-Being. You may proceed to section 443.
All right, section 443 is very straightforward. It's just one sentence long. It's the repeal of the child tax credit. And section 24 of Title 26 United States Code is repealed effective December 31st, 2023. So at the end of the 2023 tax year, the child tax credit would end. I mean, this is probably a good place to just ask the question, like, why do we have a child tax credit? Like, why do we administer this through the Internal Revenue Service as a way of addressing poverty? Doesn't it make a lot more sense to run it through an entitlement program like Social Security? And so that's what the American Union Jobs Program does, is that this is not an IRS issue. This is a Social Security issue. So it will be repealed in 2024. That gives us plenty of time to get the program, the American Union Jobs Program, up and running. I think we talked about with the Treasury dollar bills that 6 to 8 months is probably a time frame for getting digital accounts set up for every American and getting all the things necessary to implement. So probably looking at summer of 2023 to get this rolled out. And for whatever overlap there is, it's just a bonus. Congress could always step in and modify the child tax credit if they want, but this provision just repeals it at the end of 2024. And so this is one of the other savings from enacting universal basic income. The child tax credit is sort of this, they make different changes here and there, and so it's not like one very stable policy. But if it's a $3,000 per child tax credit in 2024, working off of numbers from the Tax Policy Center, it would cost $183 billion that year. So that is $183 billion that we'd be able to lop off the budget by replacing it with the American Union Jobs Program. So we repeal the child tax credit then, and I think that concludes my testimony for section 443. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Fantastic. Seeing no questions, section 443 is assigned to the Subcommittee on Promoting Well-Being. I'd like to thank the delegate for his testimony.
Thank you. Yeah, again, the American Union Jobs Program is universal basic income. And I know if you're used to hearing about things like the job guarantee or whatever, that you might make the wrong connection at first. But being a good American is work. Like people do all sorts of things that they don't get paid for, volunteering with the PTA or Meals on Wheels or coaching Little League or, even just the amount of content that people create for YouTube and the internet and Wikipedia and all these things. So an American Union Jobs Programs acknowledges that and says, yeah, be a good American, contribute to society around you. Here's $300 a week to help you and then make sure that you can do it. So
It's very freeing. Yes. All right. Thank you. The next session of the Phoenix Congress will be held on Monday, March 21st. We will review sections 451 to 455 relative to a value-added tax. This hearing is adjourned.